Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Haywood,
And my name is Patrick Ford.
and we are building Hedgefox. So before we dive into who and what Hedgefox is, let's just begin by talking about who this service is for. So Patrick, who are we building Hedgefox for?
Yeah, so we're building Hedgefox for a variety of different stakeholders. The first one is just learners. So obviously, we're building an education platform. Learners are one of the primary stakeholders in that. The second one is obviously teachers and faculty. You might call them content creators. We're building it so that they can have a place to build content and actually benefit from it. Institutions as well is another one of our stakeholders that we're trying to build for. This is more of a long-term goal, I would say, but creating a framework that institutions can participate in, whereby they can connect with other institutions. We can kind of democratize this course creation within institutions, right? Instead of learners being locked into one college, they can kind of build their own degree, and this allows institutions more flexibility as well. And then the last two are employers. So giving employers the ability to verify an employee's credentials, and then also allow learners to actually find jobs easier and allow employers to find qualified recruits or applicants easier. And then the last one is just investors, right? So we kind of are shooting for this positive sum game amongst all those stakeholders, I think. So that's primarily, those are the kind of, I guess, five groups that we're building for, that we're actually building Hedgefox for.
Yeah, and the students, faculty, institutions, and employers are all investors in a sense, because the platform that we're creating is, they can get paid to learn, they can get paid to teach. And so, as he was saying, it's a positive sum game that we're playing. So there's obviously a problem with education, or we wouldn't be trying to build this thing. So what are some of the issues that we're facing today?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost at everybody's mind is student debt, right? That's like one of the biggest issues, I think, that pretty much everybody would agree on. That anytime you take a guarantee of a backed loan, a student loan, that it's a whole lot easier to spend someone else's money than it is your own. So, and that goes for students and institutions. So the natural response to this is to gradually just keep spending more and more and more, which yields higher tuition costs for students, which means that they have to borrow more. And that really lengthens the amount of time that students are able to really get the maximum benefit out of the degree that they've obtained. So student debt is definitely, if not the biggest, one of the biggest issues that we're looking to solve. And Hedgefox started with that goal in mind first. It was just, kind of the question of what would it look like if we could actually pay students to learn, right? Kind of like flipping this paradigm on its head, so that, instead of students having to pay to go to school, or even going to school for free, right? Going above and beyond that and saying how, with the technology that cryptocurrency and blockchain provides, how can we leverage that technology to actually flip the script and pay students to learn instead? And I think there's a chart that on Pew Research recently that said that, the cost of tuition has stayed basically the same from 2019 to 2021. Well, enrollment also went down during that time, during the pandemic, across all institutions. And so if you look even prior to 2019, that, student debt or tuition cost has just absolutely been just linear all the way up for, almost 20 years now, solid. And we see like different things like textbooks, those have come down in price because of open educational resources, or OER, where faculty they're actually just writing textbooks that don't cost anything. They're collaborating together and creating textbooks that colleges can use. They're actually peer reviewed. They're reputable, accurate sources. And so our goal is to kind of use this payment mechanism to also bring down the cost of tuition itself, not just textbooks. So student debt is a big one. The second one is credentialing. And if you've ever tried to like transfer credits between institutions, it's really difficult to do because some of your credits don't transfer. You may have to retake a class. It may only count for partial credit. That's a very difficult thing to do. And it costs a lot of money, right? And on top of that, the accreditation agencies that accredit schools, they're incredibly self-serving in a way, right? Because in order to become a part of an accrediting agency, you have to pay dues, right? And then in order to get more people into the accrediting agency basically sets all of the standards. And so it's kind of like this like social club group think kind of thing that happens in accrediting agencies where, well, if you don't agree with the standards that we provide, we're just not going to accredit you. And that really stifles innovation, really is what it does. So credentialing and accreditation, that is a big part of it as well. And then also the other part of that is employers. They have, diploma mills, and diploma fraud is an actual thing where people will forge their resume. Currently, there's no way to verify that unless you call the institution, have the institution send their transcripts. And even more than that, if I put down that I volunteered at a particular organization and put that on my resume, the employer has no way of verifying things that are not tracked, right? And so by providing credentialing on-chain, on the blockchain, we're able to actually apply that to a lot of different contexts, not just education, but volunteer work and like maybe private projects that you've done, right? Where people's knowledge is not limited to just what they've learned in school. Maybe it's a project that they develop themselves, right? Entrepreneurial, that entrepreneurial spirit that they may have. So credentialing is a big part. And then the other part is just knowledge silos. This is the other major goal of Hedgefox, is to break down these kind of centralized hubs of knowledge in academia. And that's not in like a detrimental tear the system down kind of way necessarily. It's really just, we found that like people are just in general happier, more productive contributors to society if they have access to knowledge to make things happen. And so we're kind of like tearing down these, ivory tower is like probably a very strong term, but essentially we're tearing down these towers of knowledge and kind of making them more open, more distributed, more accessible to the community, which we hope will, in turn make learners and students want to give back to their communities and actually enable them to do that by removing those social, financial barriers that may prevent them from having access to that knowledge. So,
So, man, that's like a lot of problems to take on. It's almost like how do you solve world peace? Seems like what we're pursuing. It's a lofty goal, but with the power of blockchain, it's attainable. And so, the listener may be wondering, who are these two bozos, these Southerners,
for sure.
Guys, whatever your picture you're painting of us is probably true. So who are we, to think that we can offer an alternative to this? I mean, this is a historical system as well. And so who are we to think we can do anything about this?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to say that there's any like one technological solution that can solve like all of the problems, because it does kind of sound like that. It's like, wow, like if we just implement blockchain, like it will solve everyone's problems. Ideal, like obviously in an ideal situation, that is true. But I do think that crypto and blockchain provides systems and structures that we've never had before that we can definitely leverage. And I think, we can talk about this later if you want, but this difference between generalists and specialists is really important here, because you have these specialists in cryptocurrency, you have these specialists in education, and no one's really talking to each other about how those two things can improve each other. We do have some, cryptocurrency projects that are specific to teaching cryptocurrency topics. So education is being helped in that way. But there's nothing that is currently trying to bridge the gap between these two things and say, how can we use cryptocurrency to make education in general a priority, right? And to improve it. Because we've had these systems, especially in higher education, but I would say over all of education in general, we've had these systems in place for, centuries. And so it's not going to be an easy thing to tear it down. Or not tear it down, but to, evolve that system into something new.
To reform it. Yeah.
To reform it. Yeah, exactly. And I think cryptocurrency and blockchain provides us with the tools that we need finally to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because it provides us with this, if you can imagine, a government is able to mint dollar bills and take dollar bills out of circulation. They're able to control lots of different aspects about our lives that affect our economy. That is a very interdisciplinary thing, is government, financial institutions, things like that. But what crypto allows us to do is now we have the same tools that the government and these institutions have to kind of make it whatever we want and use it how, we think it might work. And that's really powerful. We've basically democratized, governance, right? And, and democratized finance, which is revolutionary for lots of different contexts and institutions, but I think particularly education is where it can be leveraged the most. And so, why listen to us? I would say, as with anything in crypto, we say DYOR. Do your own research, research the problems in education and kind of see where we're coming from. And, if you research, all that stuff and find that, hey, these guys are right, maybe this does stand a chance. At least, even if Hedgefox is a failure, at least we will have given some people some ideas as to how these two may interact with each other. That's what I would say.
And long term, this thing is going to be community led as well, and community driven as most projects. But we'll get to that at another time. But just speaking to me and you in particular, I mean, we both are passionate about the academy and about technology and how we can utilize technology to influence the academy. I mean, you've taught, in academics. I'm still pursuing my master's. We love education and we see the value in it. We're not education haters, as many people are. We want to leverage technology, and both of us work in a technology company. And so I feel we're both uniquely positioned in just our skills and our experience to both come to this with just a fresh perspective to offer a new alternative to education.
Well said.
So, now, let's dive into what this thing really is. What is Hedgefox? What is this solution that we're offering, and how are we going to go about solving these problems?
Yeah. So I guess, the platform in general is kind of the framework itself to do it. And it's tough to talk about it without also talking about kind of the roadmap for the future as well. So primarily it's social focused, right? We're just focused on like social learning for the most part. And this is mainly for adoption purposes because it's a whole lot easier to affect the culture first than it is to change systems from a high level. So really we're trying to impact people's social interactions as much as we are their learning at first. And so the platform really takes cues from a lot of the learning that that the listeners probably engage in on a regular basis without ever knowing it. You see on Twitter, right? You have people posting threads of here's how I did XYZ. If you go on Quora and ask a question, right? There's multiple answers from different people and different perspectives on, the answer to the question that you've asked. If you go on Reddit, you'll find kind of the same thing, right? This threaded content of people interacting and discussing, and somehow through that, people are able to derive different perspectives. They're able to at least somewhat come to a single source of truth about something. And so Hedgefox really aims to take that type of informal learning that happens, that type of informal learning environment, and kind of package that in a very similar experience. So the platform is really just basically an app that takes this short form threaded content, right? Links, videos, text, podcast episodes, wherever that knowledge is found to be relevant, it's packaging it under, a thread, what we're calling a cred, a credential, where they can basically just read it as they would like a social feed, like a social media feed. And so that's kind of like the phase one, I would say. And then kind of
for early adoption.
Yeah, exactly. For early adoption. And so the second phase is really about more decentralizing that and also introducing like a professional side of that platform. So, we'll always have the social side if you just want to do very self-directed, informal type learning over there. But then there will also be a professional side where you can actually take, credentials that are created by multiple people that actually work at institutions or universities. And that portion is still, like, obviously we're not there yet, but that portion is still all being fleshed out as to like what that will look like, how will we onboard partners, that sort of stuff. But that's kind of the generals of the platform itself, I guess, and how it works. And then another portion I would say is just the introduction of NFT certificates. I mentioned briefly about credentialing, but this is like a really critical piece about this, is that a lot of people think of NFTs as just artwork or just music or videos or whatever. But what they're really good for is storing very specific data on the blockchain that can be verified. And so anytime where you need to remove an element of trust, in some sense, we could say, someone completes a credential, they reward us a NFT certificate, and anybody that accesses that NFT collection can, find and verify that, yes, this person did attain this particular credential. And there's a lot of different benefits to that. I mean, I won't go too deep into that. But that's kind of the general idea there about the NFT certificates.
So we have the platform, we have the NFTs that come from it, but it's all built on this kind of what's called tokenomics. We have this token and all this kind of just economy that's built within this. So kind of dive into how all that works.
Yeah. So like a common question that we have gotten, and I imagine we'll get in the future as well, is how can you just continue to pay out people indefinitely to learn on your platform? And it's a good question, right? Because you can't create something from nothing, obviously. And I liken it to like filling up a bathtub halfway, opening the drain, and then turning on the water, right? The level in the bathtub doesn't really change a whole lot. It's going to be really hard to either fill it up or drain it if both the faucet and the drain are open. And so the tokenomics of Hedgefox kind of works in a similar way. So we have a token that we reward people in called HFox, and it's just a token on the Polygon network.
Similar to, if you've heard of Bitcoin, that's
similar to Bitcoin. I'm trying to, like, Ethereum, Matic. You've probably heard of Shiba Inu and Dogecoin and all those.
Just a token.
It's just a token. It's just any of those, really, for all intents and purposes. And that token is rewarded to users when they complete credentials, and only when they complete credentials. And so they don't pay anything up front. When they start a credential, we actually burn tokens or get rid of them, right? We remove them from the supply. We burn tokens when they start a credential so that the incentive for them to actually complete the credential goes up. Because if you remove supply, it increases the price of whatever's left, right? If I have 5 apples and only 2 people, right, each person can get more than 1 apple, right? But if I have 2 people and I only have 1 apple, that apple is really valuable because I've only got one of them, right? It's the scarcity principle. And the same is true for HFox. So a person starts a credential, we burn a certain amount of tokens. Once they complete it, we then mint tokens to replace the ones that were burned and dole out a reward to the user for completing the credential. So that's kind of how we balance this incentive mechanism with burning and minting tokens, and to basically keep the supply as level as possible, while also making it actually valuable to the learner and to the content creators to actually keep using the platform. And so what that really does is it helps quantify education in some way, the value of education. Because if you just say, like, what's the value of education, right? You're going to get all kinds of different answers, right? But by applying this kind of tokenomics model to it, learners and creators are actually able to quantify their learning in some sense, based on, the reward mechanism and their incentive to actually complete it and different things like that. So that's the basics of the tokenomics. There's a lot of other pieces that go into that. We won't go down into the weeds about, protocol on liquidity and all that sort of stuff. But we've tried to create a system that is as sustainable as possible to make sure that we can keep paying people to take courses, to create courses, those types of things. So
so that was really helpful, and that was a super high level view. I mean, you can really get into the weeds of this stuff, and Patrick has written about all of these things in greater depth. And so, Patrick, really 2 questions. How can someone learn more about this, and how can they get involved in this journey?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say is, if you want to really learn about the nitty-gritty details of how it works, definitely check out the Hedgefox white paper, which you can find at docs.hedgefox.io. And that'll give you pretty much everything you need to know about how it works. If there is a question that you have, feel free to submit it on the FAQ page. And I'll see if I can either get it added to the docs or, answer you directly. Because I understand that there probably will be a lot of questions about how it works and all that sort of stuff. So those docs really provide the nitty-gritty details about, how we're able to pay people out, how we invest, and generate returns, and then buy back and burn tokens and all that sort of, in the weeds type stuff. So that's the first thing. And then the second question, what was the second part of that question?
Well, I'll just answer it. So how can you get involved in this? And so one of the major ways is to just join our community. So no matter where you're watching this, whether you're on social media, YouTube, or you're on our website, go to hedgefox.io and you'll see a button that says join our Discord. And so you'll want to click that button, and it will open another tab in your browser. And if you have Discord downloaded, then it will open that. But if not, then just go and download Discord. It's an online communication platform, and that's where our community lives. That's where as we bring on voting and different things like that in the future, that's where that will occur. That's the best place to get a hold of us even. And so just go there, hedgefox.io, click that, join the Discord, and just come along on this journey with us. Whether you participate in the platform or not, just feel free to join. You can listen, you can converse with people. That's one of the best ways to learn about all of this. Even in this whole entire blockchain cryptocurrency world, Discord is really the place to find community in this space. And so come on the journey with us. Go join that. So let's kind of wrap this up. I got a couple more questions for you, Patrick. What is at stake if this doesn't work out? I mean, what are the consequences of keeping the education system the same?
Yeah, so I think, the cost obviously is one of the biggest ones, right?
Right.
Cost is one of the biggest ones because so far there's not been a reversal in cost. So there's no sense to think that it's not going to rise in the future.
It's increasing. I mean, right? Like looking back at how much it used to cost to go to college.
Yes, definitely. And when you I think when you combine that with the fact that wages are not rising with jobs and with the cost of community, or at least they're not on pace. They're not at the same pace, right? Mm-hmm. They are rising a little bit, but they're not at the same pace that the cost of things are going. And so I think you'll continue to see that college is increasingly more expensive to go to. And that's not a knock against college. That's just kind of how the system is designed. Yeah. And there's like a really good article by John Warren in Inside Higher Ed where he talks about, the system that we have, it doesn't make sense, right? We're concerned about ROI and things like that. What happens if we removed even the concern about ROI, right? With Hedgefox, you didn't invest anything to begin with. So, I mean, your time is essentially all you're investing. Mm-hmm. And so that talk of ROI and all that stuff goes out the window. It's not even necessary anymore. And so I think, education will continue to rise in cost. And then the second portion of it will be, there will continue to be, it will continue to be subject to, government overreach, right? Abuse by any institutions that oversee it. You'll continue to see, conflict around like what a professor can say, what they can't say, injection of political and religious ideas into the classroom, all of that stuff, regardless of your opinion on any of that, right? That will always be a part of education in some way. Because it's a centralized thing, right? That's controlled by humans, and humans are, primarily plagued by the human condition, right? Of looking out for ourselves. So, really, Hedgefox, I think education will continue to deal with those problems until we decentralize it in some way, right? I'm not saying that Hedgefox is the solution because it's an experiment. We don't know if it's going to work. But at the very least, we can explore what that might look like, right? And have some courage to try something different. Yeah. And I think Hedgefox hopefully is a really ambitious way to try and explore in that, like on that frontier. So
it's democratized education. It's education by the people and for the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess last question. Hedgefox gets built. We build this platform. People start using it. They get paid to learn and they get paid to teach. So who are they going to become as a result of this? What kind of is the goal? What is a Hedgefox?
Yeah. So there's, in our documentation, I would encourage everybody to go and read. There's a short story in there about a girl named Louisa. It's a fictional story. But it is a story about, kind of a hypothetical of what might happen with somebody who engages with Hedgefox. And so like our goal is to really create competent and compassionate learners, right? Problem solvers. And I love Archilochus, who was a Greek philosopher. He said, had this idea about foxes and hedgehogs, right? Saying that a fox knows a lot of different things, but a hedge fox is focused on one thing. And kind of the implication here, academia has kind of used this saying a lot over the centuries to mean that, the fox is very concerned with like, details and very, the scientific inquiry and observation, right? All these very methodical, facts-oriented things that don't really have very much play with each other, right? They're just kind of facts out there. And the hedgehog is kind of the flip side of that. They're the creatives, the dreamers, right? These people who are able to, they're very compassionate. They see a bigger picture, but they miss a lot of the details, right? And so a hedgefox is someone who kind of combines these two different things, right? They're an interdisciplinarian. They're able to maybe specialize in a few things, but they're not always, you're never an expert in those things. But you're also able to take compassion and, the ability to, empathy, all of these, good qualities, that we see, in mankind and use those and combine them with, knowledge and facts in order to solve problems. A lot of the times this looks like someone who is, gentle but firm, right? We don't see these as two opposites. I can say those two things and maybe you think about your dad or, a tree or something like that. And so that's kind of the idea. We want to create competent yet compassionate problem solvers, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. Man, that's amazing. I want to be that, right?
I know, yeah.
That's what we all ultimately want to be. So, yeah, we're going to do this thing. We're going to try. So visit us at hedgefox.io. You can find us on Twitter at the same name, at hedgefox.io. Go to the website, read the white paper, join our Discord, and come be a part of this amazing thing that we are trying to build. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.